King Solomon's Mines, Audiobook Part 9, Final Part. And ye would go. Infidus, my uncle, and my Induna, shall take thee by the hand and guide thee with a regiment. There is, as I have learnt, another way across the mountains that he shall show. Ye farewell, my brothers, brave white men. See me no more, tor I have no heart to bear it. Behold, I make a decree, and it shall be published from the mountains to the mountains. Your names, Incubu, Macumazahn, and Bugwan, shall be as the names of dead kings, and he who speaks them shall die. So shall your memory be preserved in the land forever. Go now, ere my eyes rain tears like a woman's. At times, when ye look back down the path of life, or when ye are old and gather yourselves together to crouch before the fire, because the sun has no more heat, ye will think of how we stood shoulder to shoulder in that great battle that thy wise words planned, Macumazahn, of how thou wast the point of that horn that galled Twala's flank, Bugwan, whilst thou stoodst in the ring of the greys, Incubu, and men went down before thine axe like corn before a sickle. Aye, and of how thou didst break the wild bull's, Twala's strength, and bring his pride to dust. Fair. This extraordinary and negative way of showing intense respect is by no means unknown among African people, and the result is that if, as is usual, the name in question has a significance, the meaning has to be expressed by an idiom or another word. In this way, a memory is preserved for generations, or until the new word supplants the old one. Ignosi's farewell. 277, so ye well forever. Incubu, Macumazahn, and Bugwan, my lords and my friends. He rose, looked earnestly at us for a few seconds, and then threw the corner of his carrosse over his head so as to cover his face from us. We went in silence. Next day at dawn, we left Loo, escorted by our old friend Infidus, who was heartbroken at our departure, and the regiment of buffaloes. Early as the hour was, all the main street of the town was lined with multitudes of people, who gave us the royal salute as we passed at the head of the regiment, while the women blessed us as having rid the land of Twala, throwing flowers before us as we went. It really was very affecting, and not the sort of thing one is accustomed to meet with from natives. One very ludicrous incident occurred, however, which I rather welcomed, as it gave us something to laugh at. Just before we got to the confines of the town, a pretty young girl with some beautiful lilies in her hand came running forward and presented them to Good. Somehow they all seemed to like Good. I think his eyeglass and solitary whisker gave him a fictitious value, and then said she had a boon to ask. Speak on. Let my lord show his servant his beautiful white legs, that his servant may look on them, and remember them all her days, and tell of them to her children. His servant has travelled 4 days' journey to see them, for the fame of them has gone throughout the land. I'll be hanged if I do, said Good excitedly. 278. King Solomon's Mines. Come, come, my dear fellow, said Sir Henry, you can't refuse to oblige a lady. I won't, said Good obstinately. It is positively indecent. However, in the end, he consented to draw up his trousers to the knee, amidst notes of rapturous admiration from all the women present, especially the gratified young lady. And in this guise he had to walk till we got clear of the town. Good's legs will, I fear, never be so greatly admired again. Of his melting teeth, and even of his transparent eye, they wearied more or less, but of his legs, never. As we travelled, Infidus told us that there was another pass over the mountains to the north of the one followed by Solomon's Great Road, or rather, that there was a place where it was possible to climb down the wall of cliff that separated Kukuanaland from the desert, and was broken by the towering shapes of Sheba's breasts. It appeared, too, that rather more than 2 years previously, a party of Kukuana hunters had descended this path into the desert in search of ostriches, whose plumes were much prized among them for war headdresses, and that in the course of their hunt they had been led far from the mountains and were much troubled by thirst. Seeing, however, trees on the horizon, they made towards them and discovered a large and fertile oasis of some miles in extent and plentifully watered. It was by way of this oasis that he suggested that we should return, and the idea seemed to us a good one, as it appeared that we should escape the rigours of the mountain pass, and as some of the hunters were in Ignosi's farewell. 79. Attendants to guide us to the oasis, from which they stated they could perceive more fertile spots far away in the desert. Travelling easily, on the night of the 4th day's journey, we found ourselves once more on the crest of the mountains that separate Kukuanaland from the desert, which rolled away in sandy billows at our feet, and about 25 miles to the north of Sheba's Breasts. At dawn on the following day, we were led to the commencement of a precipitous descent, by which we were to descend the precipice and gain the desert 2,000 and more feet below. Here we bade farewell to that true friend and sturdy old warrior, Infidus, who solemnly wished Ali good upon us and nearly wept with grief. "Never, my lords," he said, "shall mine old eyes see the like of ye again. Ah, the way that Incubu cut his men down in the battle! Ah, for the sight of that stroke with which he swept off my brother Twala's head! It was beautiful, beautiful. I may never hope to see such another, except perchance in happy dreams." It often puzzled all of us to understand how it was possible that Ignosis' mother, bearing the child with her, should have survived the dangers of the journey across the mountains and the desert, dangers which so nearly proved fatal to ourselves. It has since occurred to me, and I give the idea to the reader for what it is worth, that she must have taken this second route and wandered out like Haggard into the desert. If she did so, there is no longer anything inexplicable about the story, since she may well, as Ignosi himself related, have been picked up by some ostrich hunters before she or the child were exhausted, and led by them to the oasis, and thence, by stages to the fertile country, and so on, by slow degrees southwards to Zululand. A.Q. 280 King Solomon's Mines. We were very sorry to part from him. Indeed, Good was so moved that he gave him as a souvenir. What do you think? An eyeglass. Afterwards we discovered that it was a spare one. Infidus was delighted, foreseeing that the possession of such an article would enormously increase his prestige, and after several vain attempts actually succeeded in screwing it into his own eye. Anything more incongruous than the old warrior looked with an eyeglass I never saw. Eyeglasses don't go well with leopard-skin cloaks and black ostrich plumes. Then, having seen that our guides were well laden with water and provisions, and having received a thundering farewell salute from the buffaloes, we wrung the old warrior's hand and began our downward climb. A very arduous business it proved to be, but somehow that evening we found ourselves at the bottom without accident. "Do you know," said Sir Henry that night, as we sat by our fire and gazed up at the beetling cliffs above us, "I think that there are worse places than Kukuanaland in the world, and that I have spent unhappier times than the last month or two, though I have never spent such queer ones. Eh? You fellows?" Sigh. "I almost wish I were back," said Good, with a as for. Myself, I reflected that all's well that ends well. But in the course of a long life of shaves, I never had such shaves as those I had recently experienced. The thought of that battle still makes me feel cold all over, and as for our experience in the treasure chamber, found. 281. Next morning, we started on a toilsome march across the desert, having with us a good supply of water carried by our 5 guides, and camped that night in the open, starting again at dawn on the morrow. By midday of the 3rd day's journey, we could see the trees of the oasis of which the guides spoke, and by an hour before sundown we were once more walking upon grass and listening to the sound of running water. Chapter 20. found, and now I come to perhaps the strangest thing that happened to us in all that strange business, and one which shows how wonderfully things are brought about. I was walking quietly along, some way in front of the other two, down the banks of the stream which ran from the oasis till it was swallowed up in the hungry desert sands, when suddenly I stopped and rubbed my eyes, as well I might. There, not 20 yards in front, placed in a charming situation, under the shade of a species of fig tree and facing to the stream, was a cosy hut, built more or less on the Kafir principle of grass and withes, only with a full-length door instead of a bee-hole. What the dickens, said I to myself, can a hut be doing here? Even as I said it, the door of the hut opened, and there limped out of it a white man, 282 King Solomon's mines, clothed in skins and with an enormous black beard. I thought that I must have got a touch of the sun. It was impossible. No hunter ever came to such a place as this. Certainly no hunter would ever settle in it. I stared, and so did the other man. And just at that juncture Sir Henry and Good came up. "Look here, you fellows," I said. "Is that a white man, or am I mad?" Sir Henry looked and Good looked, and then all of a sudden the lame white man with the black beard gave a great cry and came hobbling towards us. When he got close, he fell down in a sort of faint. With a spring, Sir Henry was by his side. "Great powers!" he cried. "It is my brother George!" At the sound of the disturbance, another figure, also clad in skins, emerged from the hut with a gun in his hand and came running towards us. On seeing me, he too gave a cry. "Macumazahn," he halloed. "Don't you know me, Baas? I'm Jim the Hunter. I lost the note you gave me to give to the Baas, and we have been here nearly 2 years." And the fellow fell at my feet and rolled over, weeping for joy. "You careless scoundrel," I said. "You ought to be well hided." Meanwhile, the man with the black beard had recovered and got up, and he and Sir Henry were pump-handling away at each other, apparently without a word to say. But whatever they had quarrelled about in the past, I suspect it was a lady, though I never asked. It was evidently forgotten now. "My dear old fellow," burst out Sir Henry at last, "found." 83:1. I thought that you were dead. I have been over Solomon's mountains to find you, and now I come across you perched in the desert, like an old Aasvogel vulture. "I tried to go over Solomon's mountains nearly 2 years ago," was the answer, spoken in the hesitating voice of a man who has had little recent opportunity of using his tongue. "But when I got here, a boulder fell on my leg and crushed it, and I have been able to go neither forward nor back. Then I came up. 'How do you do, Mr. Neville?' I said. 'Do you remember me?' 'Why,' he said, 'isn't it Quatermain, eh, and Good too? Hold on a minute, you fellows. I'm getting dizzy again. It is all so very strange, and when a man has ceased to hope, so very happy.' That evening, over the campfire, George Curtis told us his story, which, in its way, was almost as eventful as our own, and amounted shortly to this. A little short of 2 years before, he had started from Sitanda's kraal to try and reach the mountains. As for the note I had sent him by Jim, that worthy had lost it, and he had never heard of it till today. But acting upon information he had received from the natives, he made, not for Sheba's breasts, but for the ladder-like descent of the mountains down which we had just come, which was clearly a better route than that marked out in old Dom Silvestra's plan. In the desert he and Jim suffered great hardships, but finally they reached this oasis, where a terrible accident befell George Curtis. On the day of their arrival, he was sitting by the stream, and Jim was extracting the honey from the nest of a stingless bee, which is to be 284 King Solomon's mines, found in the desert on the top of the bank immediately above him. In so doing, he loosed a great boulder of rock which fell upon George Curtis's right leg, crushing it frightfully. From that day he had been so dreadfully lame that he had found it impossible to go either forward or back, and had preferred to take the chances of dying on the oasis to the certainty of perishing in the desert. As for food, however, they had got on pretty well, for they had a good supply of ammunition, and the oasis was frequented, especially at night, by large quantities of game, which came thither for water. These they shot or trapped in pitfalls, using their flesh for food, and after their clothes wore out, their hides for covering. And so, he ended, we have lived for nearly 2 years, like a second Robinson Crusoe and his man Friday, hoping, against hope, that some natives might come here and help us away, but none have come. Only last night we settled that Jim should leave me and try to reach Sitanda's kraal and get assistance. He was to go tomorrow, but I had little hope of ever seeing him back again. And now you, of all people in the world, you, who I fancied had long ago forgotten all about me and were living comfortably in old England, turn up in a promiscuous way and find me where you least expected. It is the most wonderful thing I ever heard of, and the most merciful too. Then Sir Henry set to work and told him the main facts of our adventures, sitting till late into the night to do it. "By Jove," he said, when I showed him some of found. 285 the diamonds. Well, at least you have got something for your pains, besides my worthless self. Sir Henry laughed. They belonged to Quatermain and Good. It was part of the bargain that they should share any spoils there might be. This remark set me thinking, and having spoken to Good, I told Sir Henry that it was our unanimous wish that he should take a third share of the diamonds, or if he would not, that his share should be handed to his brother, who had suffered even more than ourselves on the chance of getting them. Finally, we prevailed upon him to consent to this arrangement, but George Curtis did not know of it till some time afterwards. And here, at this point, I think I shall end this history. Our journey across the desert, back to Sitanda's kraal, was most arduous, especially as we had to support George Curtis, whose right leg was very weak indeed, and continually throwing out splinters of bone. But we did accomplish it somehow, and to give its details would only be to reproduce much of what happened to us on the former occasion. 6 months from the date of our re-arrival at Sitanda's, where we found our guns and other goods quite safe, though the old scoundrel in charge was much disgusted at our surviving to claim them, saw us all once more safe and sound at my little place on the Berea near Durban, where I am now writing, and whence I bid farewell to all who have accompanied me throughout the strangest trip I ever made in the course of a long and varied experience. Just as I had written the last word, a Kafir came 286 King Solomon's mines up my avenue of orange trees with a letter in a cleft stick which he had brought from the post. It turned out to be from Sir Henry, and as it speaks for itself, I give it in full. Brayley Hall, Yorkshire, my dear Quatermain. I sent you a line a few mails back to say that the 3 of us, George, Good, and myself, fetched up all right in England. We got off the boat at Southampton and went up to town. You should have seen what a swell Good turned out the very next day, beautifully shaved, frock coat fitting like a glove, brand new eyeglass, etc., etc. I went and walked in the park with him, where I met some people I know, and at once told them the story of his beautiful white legs. He is furious, especially as some ill-natured person has printed it in a society paper. To come to business, Good and I took the diamonds to Streeters to be valued, as we arranged, and I am really afraid to tell you what they put them at. It seems so enormous. They say that of course it is more or less guesswork, as such stones have never to their knowledge been put on the market in anything like such quantities. It appears that they are, with the exception of 1 or 2 of the largest, of the finest, water and equal in every way to the best Brazilian stones. I asked them if they would buy them, but they said that it was beyond their power to do so, and recommended us to sell by degrees for fear we should flood the market. They offer However, 180,000 for a small portion of them. You must come home, Quatermain, and see about these things, especially if you insist upon making the magnificent present of the third share, which does not belong to me, to my brother George. As for good, he is no good. His time found. 287 is too much occupied in shaving and other matters connected with the vain adorning of the body. But I think he is still down on his luck about Fulata. He told me that since he had been home, he hadn't seen a woman to touch her, either as regards her figure or the sweetness of her expression. I want you to come home, my dear old comrade, and buy a place near here. You have done your day's work and have lots of money now, and there is a place for sale quite close which would suit you admirably. Do come. The sooner the better. You can finish writing the story of our adventures on board ship. We have refused to tell the story till it is written by you, for fear that we shall not be believed. If you start on receipt of this, you will reach here by Christmas, and I book you to stay with me for that. Good is coming, and George, and so, by the way, is your boy Harry. There's a bribe for you. I have had him down for a week's shooting, and like him. He is a cool young hand. He shot me in the leg, cut out the pellets, and then remarked upon the advantage of having a medical student in every shooting party. Goodbye, old boy. I can't say any more, but I know that you will come, if it is only to oblige your sincere friend, Henry Curtis. P.S. The tusks of the great bull that killed poor Kiva have now been put up in the hall here, over the pair of buffalo horns you gave me, and look magnificent, and the axe with which I chopped off Twala's head is stuck up over my writing table. I wish we could have managed to bring away the coats of chain armor. N.S. Today is Tuesday. There is a steamer going on Friday, and I really think I must take Curtis at his 288 King Solomon's Mines. Word, and sail by her for England, if it is only to see my boy Harry, and see about the printing of this history, which is a task I do not like to trust to anybody else. The End. Synopsis of King Solomon's Mines. Part 1. Allan Quatermain, an experienced hunter and explorer in Africa, is approached by Sir Henry Curtis and his companion, Captain John Good. They seek his help in finding Sir Henry's lost brother, who disappeared while searching for the legendary diamond mines of King Solomon. Quatermain agrees, but only if they sign a contract ensuring that if he dies, his son will receive a portion of any treasure they find. The trio, along with a native warrior named Umbopa, embarks on a dangerous expedition into uncharted lands, facing extreme heat, thirst, and the perils of the African wilderness. Synopsis of King Solomon's Mines. Part 2. As Quatermain, Sir Henry, Good, and Umbopa venture deeper into the unknown. They face deadly challenges. Crossing the scorching desert nearly kills them, and when they finally reach the mountains, marking the entrance to the lost land, they barely survive the freezing cold. Eventually, they discover a hidden African kingdom ruled by the cruel King Twala. This land is filled with ancient traditions, mysterious rituals, and a fearsome witch named Gagool, who seems to have supernatural powers. Umbopa, however, begins to reveal a secret. He is not just a simple warrior, but the rightful heir to the throne, exiled by Twala. As tensions rise, the group becomes entangled in a dangerous political conflict, with Twala seeing them as both a threat and an opportunity. Meanwhile, the mines of King Solomon, full of legendary diamonds, remain a tantalizing mystery. Synopsis of King Solomon's Mines. Part 3. Now deep within the lost African kingdom, Quatermain and his companions realize they are caught in a web of power, betrayal, and ancient customs. Twala, the brutal king, rules through fear, executing anyone who opposes him. His power is reinforced by the sinister witch Gagool, an old, twisted woman who claims to have lived for centuries and uses her knowledge of prophecy and deceit to maintain her influence. The adventurers, initially treated as guests, quickly understand that they are actually prisoners, kept alive only as long as they serve a purpose for the king. Umbopa, now revealing himself as Ignosi, the rightful heir to the throne, begins, gathering support among the oppressed people of the kingdom. His cause is strengthened when he exposes Twala's tyranny and claims his divine right to rule. The kingdom's warriors, tired of the king's cruelty, start siding with Ignosi, preparing for an inevitable battle. Meanwhile, Quatermain, Good, and Sir Henry navigate the dangerous political landscape, carefully choosing their actions to survive while also aiding the rebellion. When the war finally breaks out, it is a brutal, chaotic battle. The warriors, loyal to Ignosi, armed with superior strategy and the support of the people, clash violently against Twala's forces. Sir Henry, a man of great strength, fights fiercely, while Captain Good, despite his eccentric ways, proves to be a skilled and resourceful fighter. Quatermain, using his experience, provides critical leadership in the heat of battle. As the dust settles, Twala is defeated and brought before Ignosi. Following the traditions of the land, the cruel king is executed, and the rightful ruler is restored. The kingdom rejoices, celebrating the end of tyranny. However, Gagul remains a dangerous figure. Her knowledge of the fabled mines and her sinister mind still pose a threat. The adventurers, now in favor with the new ruler, are granted permission to seek out the legendary King Solomon's Mines. Synopsis of King Solomon's Mines, Part 4. With Ignosi now ruling as king, Quatermain and his companions finally have the opportunity to pursue the legendary treasure that brought them on this journey. Guided by the sinister Gagul, they are led into the depths of a hidden cavern where the fabled King Solomon's Mines are located. As they step inside, they are overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of riches, heaps of diamonds, gold, and other treasures from an ancient time. Their dream of immense wealth has finally materialized. However, greed and power struggles are not the only dangers lurking in the darkness. Gagul, knowing she is no longer needed, attempts one final act of treachery. As the adventurers collect the diamonds, she triggers a hidden mechanism, causing the entrance to the cavern to collapse. The explorers narrowly escape, but not before, witnessing Gagul's own demise as she is crushed beneath the falling rocks. Unfortunately, they lose most of the treasure in the process, managing to escape with only a handful of diamonds. Now, with their mission accomplished and their lives intact, the group prepares to leave the kingdom. Ignosi, grateful for their help, offers them positions of power, but they decline, knowing they belong in the outside world. With a heartfelt farewell, they begin the long journey back across the desert, this time carrying not just the diamonds, but also the knowledge that they have survived one of the greatest adventures of all time. Upon returning to civilization, they discover that the handful of diamonds they managed to save is more than enough to make them wealthy for the rest of their lives. Sir Henry is reunited with his long-lost brother, and each member of the group goes their separate way, forever changed by the extraordinary journey they undertook. Quatermain, however, remains the same at heart, an adventurer who values experience over riches, knowing that true wealth lies in the stories of the past and the thrill of the unknown. My thoughts on King Solomon's Mines. This novel is an exciting adventure story that combines exploration, danger, and the timeless theme of the quest for treasure. H. Rider Haggard does an excellent job of capturing the exotic and mysterious atmosphere of unexplored Africa, mixing real-world geography with myth and legend. The pacing is excellent, with moments of intense action balanced by suspense and discovery. The characters are also memorable. Quatermain is a fantastic protagonist, embodying the classic rugged explorer with a mix of wisdom and humility. Sir Henry and Good add different dimensions to the team, each bringing their own strengths and quirks. The political intrigue with Twala, Ignosi, and Gagul adds depth to what could have been just a straightforward treasure hunt. One of the strongest aspects of the novel is its ability to transport the reader into an unknown world full of wonder and danger. While some elements of the book reflect the colonial attitudes of the time, it remains an engaging and influential adventure story. It's easy to see why King Solomon's Mines became a classic and a blueprint for later adventure tales, including movies like Indiana Jones. If you enjoyed this breakdown of King Solomon's Mines and love classic adventure stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think about this legendary tale. Have you read it? What's your favorite adventure novel? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.